Hello, my 2nd through 5th grade leaders. Welcome. It is finally June, which means it's also upgrade weekend. So we are getting some people shuffling around, some kids shuffling around everywhere. You may have a new room, you may be leading a new group, all of that. And so I just want to encourage you guys that we are going to start this month off strong, and it's going to be a great month as we walk into this new series and this new plan. And we are doing Ready, Set, Move, all right, which is all about faith, okay? And so trusting God no matter what is our big understanding that we're trying to get on this whole series, okay? And with this, we're doing faith for the month. And faith is trusting in when you can't see because of what you can see. And so we're seeing that God is faithful. We're seeing that God is good. And because of that, we can trust in the God who we can't see, even though like we can't see him, we know that he is faithful and that he's good, and all the things that he's done for us has been amazing. So we need to trust him. And so that's kind of what we're looking at there with faith and understanding is folding faith back into trusting into the one true God who is always there for us and always wants to know us more. And with that, we're doing our monthly memory verse of Hebrews 11:1, which is faith is being sure of what we hope for, and it is being sure of what we do not see. And so with that, we are just getting that true understanding of what faith is all about. Now, this story I'm really excited about because it's Paul's conversion, or Paul becomes a believer, right? So he's on the road to Damascus, and the Lord literally just shows up and stops him, blinds him for a little bit, and completely transforms his life from that moment on. And so with that, we are going to be diving into the bottom line of knowing Jesus changes how we see things. And because we see things differently, knowing Jesus, we act differently because we see everything around us in life differently. And so with this, you have your first activity is just, what are you excited for the summer? And they're going to have some different pieces of paper and crayons and pencils and whatever. They can sketch out what they are excited for in the summer and then start to color it and whatever. That is, again, just getting their hands moving and then to start thinking about some fun things that they're going to be doing this summer. Now, and you can always tie this back later. We don't have it written in the curriculum, but if you want to tie that back in later, you can be like, hey, like with what you were excited for in the summer, now that we've gone through this story of seeing things through the eyes of God, how can we use that for like the glory of God? How can we use that knowing Jesus? And so we weren't being selfish about it anymore. And now we're being more on the side of faith and understanding on how we can use that thing or that activity, whatever we're going to be doing this summer, towards God and like give it back to God. This next activity, your opening activity 2, what you're doing is you have some like different blocks or bricks or something like that. And what they're going to do is you're going to blindfold the children and then have them try to build something. And they're building whatever they want, like they can be creative on that. And then people are going to guess what they were building after they take the blindfolds off and stuff. And so they're all kind of building at the same time, or you can do this one by one if you want to do that instead. And the person that's building the stuff is not able to talk or anything about what they're building, but instead they're just trying to build something, but being blindfolded the whole time. Okay. Now, it's not easy to be blindfolded. We are going to hear a story about someone who couldn't see anything all of a sudden, and that's when we dive into the Bible story. And so the Bible story about Paul is just Saul to Paul is just a really cool story of just how God has shown up and can completely transform someone who was off the deep end. I mean, this guy was killing Christians. He was going to kill Christians. And so so to have this kind of conversion is huge. And then anyway, he falls blind. His servants were there, and like same thing happened to them too. Anyway, he falls blind, and then you have a story script that kind of goes along with your next activity and a little map that goes along with it too. And so the map is just a visualization of helping them understand what's happening and stuff like that. But what you're doing is you're looking around the road to Damascus sign, and you're pointing to where Saul would have traveled and all of that. And if you want, you can even pull up Google Maps and kind of get or Apple Maps or whatever, and like get an actual understanding that this is a real place. Like you could travel here right now kind of thing. And how it has maybe changed a little bit in the look, like we don't have the same lines and stuff, but how Paul was a real person who actually did this and God actually showed up to him, which is really cool. And then what you're doing is basically you're kind of acting out this story, okay? And so you also have this little script that goes along with what you're doing, and you're getting them to pretend like they're part of the story today. And so you're setting out these brown different sheets of paper or craft paper as creating a road. And then what you're doing is you're assigning parts of today's Bible story to different children. So you have someone that's going to be Saul, someone that's going to be high priest, someone's going to be two men that are traveling with Saul, and then the reader. And then as you do that, you're giving them different things to wear, or like to signify that they are that person. And so I'm going to try to have a couple of different costumes that you can put on, but you'll also have like those bandanas, the blindfold bandanas that you can use to just dress up and, act like you're that person or whatever. And then you're retelling that Bible story, and as you're retelling it, you can also like go through all of this. This gives you a script, and it gives the reader a script and all of that stuff. They have a much smaller thing to say on there, but all of that is to just go back to that bottom line of knowing Jesus changes how you see things, right? And so we're focusing on the seeing part just as a good visualization of what it means to have a totally transformed life in Christ. And then you have some really good discussion questions. These discussion questions, they talk about like, as a follower of Jesus, how is it different knowing handling these things or these following areas as a follower of Jesus versus as not a follower of Jesus. Now, here is where I want to point out here, if the children don't see a difference in how people that know Jesus handle stuff versus people that don't know Jesus handle stuff, like if there's no difference there, then that should kind of be a really good cue and a red flag for us to be like, hey, like, let's talk about how these things should be different, right? And so as a follower of Jesus, money, right? We should be treating our money totally differently than people who don't follow Jesus. How? In ways of giving extra, in ways of giving away things that, like, you normally wouldn't give away, or like even tithing, right? Giving back to the church and giving back to the establishment of the people that are gathering together to learn and study together. What about people? We should all be treating people with kindness and love and respect as followers of Jesus. If you're not a follower of Jesus, you don't have much reason to do that. But as followers of Jesus, we follow the Bible, and we follow the rules of the Bible and the understandings of the Bible. And all of that is lined out in how we should treat each other biblically. Maybe even like time, right? How can we spend our time wisely for Jesus, for the Word, for God? We should be spending it by taking time to learn more about Him, taking time to study our Bibles, taking time to pray. Like, all of those things should be a little bit different in the way that we view, or our eyes are now open to the way that we live because we know Jesus. And then you have a application activity, and what you're doing with this is you're describing how they might see things differently in these different scenarios, right? And so if nobody had a Bible, how would people see things differently? Like, if we did not have the understanding of what the Bible brings, would we be different? If you were a millionaire, like, what would that look like, right? Like, you would see things different in those ways. If you could only see for 1 hour a day, how would your life be different if you could only see for 1 hour a day? And so as they go through those scenarios, they're like, man, like, what would I do, right? And so we should really be grateful in these times too, not taking for granted what God has given us, but instead glorifying Him because of the things that we do have. And so things like vision, things like sight, things like smells, things like taste, right? We should glorify God for even those simple things because that's how He created us. And then we have a memory verse activity. And with this, you're basically just doing the memory verse, like go through the memory verse and, read it a couple times. And then they're going to write things down of different like action that you can do. And so think of like jogging or, yodeling or just some like opera voice, whatever. It could be some sort of action. But what they're going to do with this action is you're going to pick out one of these actions after you kind of mix them up a little bit and they fold them and stuff. Have them write down an action, fold them up, mix them up. And then when you pick one of those out, they're going to say the memory verse in that action. So if it's jumping, then they can be jumping up and down while they're saying the memory verse, and so on and so forth. And then your prayer activity, what I want you to do with this is we have some REAP cards, and REAP is our version of Bible study and Bible understanding. And so what they're doing with these REAP cards is basically you are trying to get them to REAP for maybe the first time. And REAP is read, examine, apply, and pray. And that's all it is, right? And so it's a version of the Bible studying that we can do. And so with REAP, I want to try to get this going a little bit before camp, especially if your kids are going to camp, please try to do this last activity of just reaping. And with this, you're basically just reading the passage, like you're picking a passage, you're reading it, you're trying to understand it from a very outside point of view, right? And just overview. Examine is where you're asking yourself a couple of questions, and there's a couple of questions on the sheet that you can go through as well that help you dive deeper into understanding that verse. And then applying it. How can I change my life because of this verse? How can I better myself because of this verse? How can I learn something new from this verse, right? And that's what you're looking at for apply. And then a pray is simply just talking to God about it, like thanking him for the verse, maybe asking him to help us with this verse and applying it to our lives and things like that. But that is what reap looks like, REAP. And so you have little worksheets that go along with that. Please work on those if you are especially going to camp and have kids going to camp. If you don't, go ahead and just do a regular prayer, and that's fine as well, because they won't be going to camp and doing the reap and stuff like that. And that's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for all that you guys do. I'm so excited for this week. It's going to be awesome. We'll see you guys in a little bit.